We all know Ole Miss lost defensive line room talent to the NFL. But what if I told you they had one more monster hiding in the closet? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Draft Yoda, where we're data driven and prospect focused. Today, we're breaking down Ole Miss defensive tackle Will Echoles, currently a 9.01 out of 10 on the Draft Yoda scale. Making him number 46 overall, defensive tackle number 5 going into this college football season. And this is one of those evaluations where production forces you to pay attention. 7 sacks from the interior, 6 batted passes, 35 defensive stops, 765 snaps across 15 games, a major role in a college football playoff semifinal team. And the wild part is, the breakout didn't come out of nowhere. It was part of the plan. Will Echoles came out of Houston High School in Germantown, Mississippi, and he was a real player before he even got to Ole Miss. Consistent 4-star recruit, Mississippi's 4A Mr. Football, ranked by 24/7 Sports as the 14th best defensive line prospect nationally, and he was a 2024 All-American. Major recruiting profile. Wasn't hidden at all. And his senior production really tells you why. 95 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. That is disruption. It's not just size, it's not just potential. That is a high school defensive lineman who lived in the opponent's backfield every single night. He did play both sides, playing offensive line, and that helped him learn the offensive side of it. So he learned how to become a better defender. Enrolled early at Ole Miss, in 2024. He didn't walk into a wide open depth chart. Ole Miss had veterans, had NFL talent. The room had that room eventually has sent 4 players to the NFL. And none of them less notable than Walter Nolan, who was a first-round pick. So Echoles had to wait, And he appeared in 8 games in a reserve role and collected 9 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and played only 121 snaps. On the surface, that doesn't look like a huge freshman season, but the context matters. The limited workload was by design. Defensive line coach Randall Joyner had a roadmap for him. And the plan was not to rush him before he was ready. The plan was to develop him behind a veteran room, let him learn, let him build, and then unleash him when the opportunity came. That's exactly what happened. 2025, he stepped into the starting lineup, played 765 snaps across 15 games. That is a ginormous number, and it matters because defensive tackle is a physically brutal position. You take on double teams, you play through contact, you fight guards and centers every snap. You're holding up in the run game, you're rushing the passer from the inside, you're absorbing punishment every snap you're on the field. And a young defender to play that much football and still produce is huge. He didn't just survive the workload, he impacted games. 7 sacks from an interior position is great. 6 batted passes, 35 defensive stops. Pressure volume near the top of the country for an interior defensive lineman. The snap load is truly one of my favorite parts of this evaluation. A lot of defensive tackles can flash in small samples. Tennessee, for example, rotates their defensive linemen like nobody's business. I don't think they've had one in the past few years that's had as many snaps as Echoles had in a single season. He played with a heavy workload. 765 snaps across 15 games is huge. He went into a playoff run, and he didn't wear down late. That matters. NFL teams wants to know if an interior defensive lineman can handle deal volume. Can he play early downs? Can he rush on third down? Can he survive long drives? And can he stay efficient in the fourth quarter? Echoles gave us evidence already that he can handle a heavy workload. One of the big things that stands out to me is his run defense. He is stout at the point of attack, rarely gets budged. It's a big deal because interior offensive lineman or interior pass rusher production is exciting. But if you cannot hold up against the run, your role is very limited. Echoles gives you both. He's a run defender and a pass rusher. He's an anchor. He can stay square. He can absorb contact. He can fight pressure with pressure. And that combination is valuable. Defensive tackles who can rush are a package player. Defensive tackles who can stop the run is replaceable. A defensive tackle who can do both is a real starter and somebody who's going to be an anchor for your team. One of the other things that jumps out is the way he knives through gaps. Echoles has a quickness off the ball. He can create early penetration, and the key that he converts that penetration into production. Some defensive tackles shoot gaps and end up out of position. They flash into the backfield not to finish. Echoles creates stops. He turns quickness into real defensive value. That's why the 35 defensive stops matter. That's why the backfield production matters. It's not just looking active, it's affecting the play. When an interior defensive lineman can create disruption before the run concept fully develops, it changes everything. Running backs have to redirect, guards have to recover, quarterback has to speed up. The offense just gets out of rhythm. And Echoles does that. One of the other things is, his pressure volume. And that's his money trait. That's going to get him a lot of money in the NFL. Interior pressure is one of those most valuable things in football. Edge pressure is amazing. But quarterbacks can step up against edge pressure. Look at somebody, and I'm not comparing Echoles to Aaron Donald, but look at somebody like Aaron Donald. When he's pushing somebody into the quarterback's lap, the other team just doesn't seem to be able to do the right things and stay in rhythm. That's how important a dominant defensive tackle rush is. Florida game is one of the games that stands out to me. 5 pressures, a strong day for an interior defensive lineman. And, the Georgia game. He pushes the pocket and repeatedly wins across both their meetings with Georgia. And that matters because Georgia and Florida, are not soft offensive linemen. They both put people into the league consistently from the offensive line. And when you build an NFL evaluation, you want to see if a player can win against real bodies and real people that are in the NFL. Echoles has shown it. He has. He has a bull rush that generates power through his hips that can walk guards backwards. It's important because quickness alone isn't enough inside. If a guard thinks you're only going to shoot the gaps, they'll let you overset. They'll catch you. They'll wash you out of a play and just walk you past the play. You need to have the ability to convert speed to power, and Echoles does that. I cannot remember the game right now, but there's a game where you literally watch him walk a guard into the quarterback. Just straight bull rush walking him into a quarterback. And that is massive for a defensive tackle. The batted passes, I've said it a couple times, but I think that really shows for him, and that's something that really matters as part of his evaluation. Echoles gets his hands up at the line of scrimmage, and I think that's an underrated interior defensive lineman skill. Not every rush is going to get home. Sometimes quarterbacks get the ball out quickly. Sometimes the protection is good. Sometimes the rush stalls. But a defensive tackle who can still affect the play by understanding passing lanes is immensely valuable. 6 deflections as an interior defender is valuable. It shows awareness, it shows timing, it shows that he does not give up on a play when he doesn't win cleanly. And for quarterbacks, interior hands can become a nightmare. They change windows, they create tip balls, they force hesitation, and it truly adds to the profile for him. Nobody's perfect. I've said it every single time. Nobody's perfect. One of the things he needs to improve on is tackling. He missed 10 tackles, and that's too many. Echoles, especially for Echoles, as a player whose profile is built around disruption and finishing, when you penetrate, you have to finish. When you create a free run to the back, you have to make the play. When you get into the backfield, you cannot lunge and miss. And there's an issue of that at times. And it has to improve. NFL backs are stronger. NFL quarterbacks are more elusive. NFL linemen recover faster. And you don't get second chances in the NFL. Echoles has to become a cleaner finisher, in my opinion. Another concern, and it's a smaller one just because of the position he plays, but it is a concern, is his ordinary time speed. He's quick in a phone booth. He wins gaps, and he can create interior pressure. But his high-end range outside the tackle box isn't great, You're not drafting him to chase players sideline to sideline. You're drafting him to win inside, to control gaps, and push the pocket. But it means the role needs to be understood. He's not a rare pursuit athlete. He is an interior disruptor, and that has a clear path in the NFL, but it also needs to be understood that he's not going to be that freak of nature that chases you down 40 yards down the field. Third concern is pad level late in long drives. Echoles can get tired when the drives get extended. That's easy. You're a big defensive lineman. That happens. The issue is his pads start to rise as he gets tired. And when that happens, guards get into his frame and they steer him and can open up gaps. And that neutralizes, some of his power. That's one of the technical details in 2026. I really want to see him, adjust and help, alleviate he needs to keep his pad level down. Because when he plays low, he is a problem. I mean, it's point blank simple. He's a problem when he plays low. And for defensive tackles, leverage is everything. Lower man usually wins. Ask anybody who's played offensive or defensive line. Lower man usually wins. Why is he defensive tackle number 5? And it's because this defensive tackle group is very strong. David Stone is the top name because the trait profile and the dominance are special. Amari Washington brings rare physical upside. Jaden Jackson has high-end flashes and strong Oklahoma projection. Tyreek Tucker has the run defense profile and interior production that makes him a strong early cycle bet. And then Will, has one of the best combination workloads of disruption in the group. But the reason he's not higher is because his tackling has to improve. The pad level has to stay down, and the range outside the box is not it's not a strength for him. There's others above him that are cleaner tacklers and have shown that they're able to chase players down. And that gives them a better flexibility between defenses. 2026 is about turning that breakout in 2025 into a full national profile. Echoles already proved he can handle the volume. Now he has to clean up some of the smaller details, reduce the missed tackles, keep the pad level down, late in drives, and maintain the run strength. If he adds a second move in his pass rush production, that would be amazing as well. And it will help prove that 2025 is not just a breakout, it was the beginning of a high end NFL profile. Um, I do want to touch on his announcement before the Fiesta Bowl that he was going to return this season. I think it led to several other Ole Miss teammates following his lead, and that matters because that tells me the team has belief, and it tells you that Echoles is part of the foundation and part of the leadership structure there, which can't be overlooked. Um, Anybody with leadership like that adds to your team and doesn't take away from it. Um, that's my grade for him is a 9.01 out of 10. He's currently 46 overall, defensive tackle number 5. He's disruptive, high snap interior defensive lineman, stout run defense, real pass rush production, and the power to push the pocket from the inside. You know, he has a few things to work on, especially with his consistency in tackling. But I think he can really make a name for himself this season. That's where he sits on my board. What do you think about Will Echoles? Is he one of the more underrated defensive tackles in college football? Where would you rank him among the interior defensive linemen in the country? Is he defensive tackle 5 going into the draft class? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy these player evaluations, we do them off of film and analytics. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. So we're going to keep putting in this work. Our goal is to have over 100 prospects before college football kicks off. I'm Draft Yoda, Bill Workman, your favorite draft nerd's favorite draft nerd. And as always, we'll see you guys in the next one.